more about what career technical education is. I just thought I'd introduce myself really quickly for those who may not know me. My name is Mabini. I'm sorry, I may not be very bright there at the bottom. I am a member of the Association for Career and Technical Education. I am currently the General Manager for PBS Guam, formerly known as KBTF. And most of my graduate work, my doctoral work, is in career technical education, or historically known as vocational education. I graduated from the University of Minnesota. They are the #1 program in the nation on career technical education. And so I'm very pleased to be here this morning to just share a little bit with you as far as my opinion of its imperativeness to be integrated within our educational system. As far as what I'll be covering in the next 20 minutes, very briefly, a little bit about what CTE is, the roots in vocational education, its relevance and its importance, and a little bit of what the heck is it, as far as the pedagogical practices, the methodologies behind it. Some recent research that backs up CTE, the challenges that we have as far as why we do not have CTE certification here in Guam, as well as why CTE certification does exist in the United States and may not be as fully supported as we all wish. And some current events locally that I thought would interest you as far as its implications for CTE, and why, because of all of that, we should adopt CTE as a norm. Okay, now as far as its roots in vocational education, at the turn of the century, we had the Industrial Revolution, and previous to that, most of the education was conducted in the prairie schools or whatnot. Then we suddenly had this Industrial Revolution, and suddenly we had these cities, and we had immigrants, we had the newly freed blacks, and there was a need to address their learning needs. And then there's this big debate happening between educators and industrialists, union folks, and as far as, well, how the heck do we even begin to prepare them, and what are we preparing them for? You know, they were back in the early 1900s at a different time, just like we're facing a different time with our technical advances today. Also back then, public funded schools started occurring. There was compulsory schooling that was required, and so suddenly school took on a different form. Now industrialists were saying, well, school is not just about learning math and English and history or whatnot. We need to start preparing them for this Industrial Revolution. And in the early 1900s, there was also the studies began about how do we determine intelligence. And back then, when they did their studies, they noticed that those who were typically immigrant or dark-skinned individuals tend to be low-performing students. And so a lot of the schools and researchers and industrialists liked the idea. They kind of grasped onto that idea, and suddenly they realized that perhaps there is this human nature, or this predisposition of individuals to perform low, and some individuals has this predisposition to perform high. And so started this pathway. Suddenly, certain students will send them to this tracking system where, because they're low-performing students, and those who may want to go to college. And so there began the academic divide, the academic and the vocational divide. Now, what happened in the 1980s and 1990s, suddenly we moved away from an industrial economic base more into a knowledge economic base. And we realized that the old model of vocational education wasn't working for us anymore. And so, but what happened is that although we were realizing this, the stigma of what vocational education was in the early 1900s, which is, okay, only those who are low performing should go to voc-ed, and those who are high performing or college path oriented should go to college ed. And I just wanted to share, I'm going to skip this screen really quick to go to the next screen, and share with you some of the quotes that I had found back in 1923. This is what they were writing. Their dullness seems to be racial. Children of this group should be segregated in special classes. They cannot master abstractions, but can often be made efficient workers. Actually, I think that's what it should be. And this is written by somebody who was doing research on intelligence testing. Another, we can picture the educational system as having a very important function as a selecting agency, a means of selecting the men of intelligence from the Deficient and Mediocre by Pillsbury. Again, this was written by a school administrator. And they felt that, well, wow, this is the democratic process. We are serving everybody. This is a great way. We're not segregating anybody. In fact, the total opposite concept came into fruition. They're saying, this is an equitable way of treating our students. This is a democratic way of schooling. We will match educational programs to their predetermined capacities and aspirations. Now, how many here today think that that's still happening? Yes, right? It's abominable, and we're like, oh no, we don't want to admit it, but it does still happen. Tracking still occurs. All right, so this stigma that began in the early 1900s still continues today. So I'm going to go back up to my previous screen. In the 1980s, they realized that vocational ed was not working anymore because our economic base was switching. In the 1980s, they started, there was big reforms that were occurring. They realized that what was happening was the school system wasn't in sync with the industry. What we were preparing them for wasn't, and doesn't this sound familiar here in Guam? So again, it's his history. That's why I wanted to bring a little bit about history. It seems to be repeating itself, and we need to pay attention to that. In the 1980s, they realized that we needed to focus on helping students be more cognitive. We focused on more cognitive development, and we needed to prepare them more for special occupations that are happening in the 1980s in this era versus what was happening in the early 1900s. The big report called Nations at Risk came about. They realized we are a failing nation. We're not competing with major countries like Japan or Germany. There was criticisms about tracking. So they're saying, wait a minute, why are you tracking our children? And businesses started complaining. They started saying, wait a minute, if we are supposedly preparing our students to be vocationally or career ready or job ready for the workforce, if we are supposedly preparing our college students to be ready for the workforce, why are we failing? So they started realizing there was something wrong with the school system, with how we were operating our school system. By the 1990s, they realized the organization behind vocational education, which was the Association for Vocational Association for Vocational Association. I think that was the term. And what they realized was that maybe the semantics vocational was a stigma that they needed to get rid of. And it was not till the 1998 that AVA became CTE. So when I say CTE, I'm talking about career technical education. So you will still see the word vocational ed in many of our literature. In fact, it's still in there here at the UOG catalogs. It still exists at the Guam Community College catalogs. But there is a big movement to eliminate that because of that. Not only just because of the stigma, but because it's not a system that operates effectively in our current conditions. When they did a study in 1997, they found out that 45% of the high schools today in the nation are actually integrating CTE into their curriculum. Examples would be the 2+2 program, where they have students, let's say from a Guam Community College, with the intention of continuing the 2 and then adding the extra 2 to complete their bachelor's program. By integrating more career technical education and academic courses, they were preparing people for wider career choices. So basically, instead of tracking and say, oh, St. Susan, you're better off as a nurse practitioner, and so you'll go here. Now we are opening it up and saying, hey, Sarah,